I think so. It's faint. An echo.
You've come to the right place. Here, the magic of song awaits those who are attuned to it.
And so the coverage of the Mammoth One Path Ends patch continues. Now online, as I make this video, there's a huge amount of discussion about the core story. People are really diving into things that they did or mostly didn't like about the update. And while I want desperately to become a picky nerd and join the hordes of other picky nerds online talking about the story specifically, first I want to look at the map, which I think is being criminally under-discussed. The map is actually really cool. I kind of had two very different experiences of this map. I was very excited about it going into the release because, Christ, this is the return to Ore, and Ore is such a rich, such a deep, such a wonderful setting. But my first experience coming here was really shallow. It was really bland. It was very on rails. Just walk here, kill mobs to complete a heart, walk here, kill mobs to complete a heart, and then go finish the story. I'm really kind of scared with this map because I think most people who just come to play the story and then leave again won't realize how much depth there is to this map. And it's hard to blame people for missing out on a lot of this. It's the 6th one. Maybe you've got used to just making those beelines through. Maybe you're not interested in going in meta events anymore and digging deeper into what's going on with it. But it is very, very, very cool. I had two experiences. The first one was very shallow, and then I went back to Sirens Landing today and was quite astounded at the amount of things that I missed. It's kind of got all the best of Season 3 stuff going on in it, and some even Season 2 influences and dry top style mechanics. So that's what I want to share with you guys. There's probably a lot you don't know about Sirens Landing. Well, let's dig in. So, first of all, it is a Living World Season 3 map. That means we get one of these Unbound Magic vendors. Unbound Magic does exist across the map. It's one of those things I think a lot of us are used to. Still is a great extra thing, though. I enjoy exploring these maps and going for the little blue orbs every now and then. I actually really like the locations of the Unbound Magic for Sirens Landing, but they're that much extra out of your way that I really think the devs should have boosted the amount that they're worth. Like, they should be worth 10 times more magic because they are such odd places to go to now. They're fun nonetheless, and I find myself going for them. But there is a vendor for Unbound Magic, just like before. At the start of the map, you spend magic plus the new currency, which are pearls. Pearls you gather from oysters around the map, similar to how we get petrified wood from trees in an earlier release. And a lot of the mainstays are back. You can buy Karma Boost for the map. You can buy a node for your home instance to allow you to get oysters frequently. You can buy new Ascended gear. There's another new amulet on this map. The last 3 maps they did all gave us new amulets, fully stat selectable for the Heart of Thorn stat stuff. And of course, then you've got new food. I mentioned this in a previous video. The food is all damage reduction food, and it's damage reduction of 10% plus another stat. So if you combo that, say, in World vs. World with expertise, this is also the first food that's come into the game with expertise instead of a flat condi duration amount. I think that might be a sign of things to come with condition damage food, as we've talked about quite recently. If you combo it with that, that can be really good in World vs. World. You can combo it with healing power or whatever. Each of the different hearts sells a different variety. Minis are available as well, showing various iconic characters and creatures from the release, like those new secret guardians that we find at the end of the story, and all of that general stuff is still in place. Beyond that, the map itself is, as you'd expect, populated by Risen mostly. There are a few old things that have returned. There's a really cool grub, a sleeping grub you'll find at the start. Oak hearts are there, and there's a kind of big monster clash style event where an oak heart fights a single Risen giant. But what's kind of interesting about all of the undead on this map is that they're all called Unchained Undead. You might be wondering, why are they unchained? Well, it's because they have no master anymore. Zhaitan is gone. One of my hopes for this map was that it would feature the place that Zhaitan died, or it would duplicate with a Ra story mode. As far as I can tell, neither of those two things are true. But the biggest tower on the map I haven't visited yet, as it's a big jumping puzzle, and you guys will be seeing that in a future video. On the topic of lore, there are a few disappointing things that really got to me on the first day, and then I kind of realized what's so bad on the second day. See, there isn't much lore at face value on this map. It's just that it's all really well hidden. So you remember other Living World Season 3 maps where we have Masart tokens hidden around? Or if you look at, say, the Karka in Lion's Arch or the Golden Badges in Season 2 maps, they do that on this map too, but you get a lot of lore information from them. So if you want to get the story of this map done, you really have to dig deep to get it. In fact, there's a huge amount that I didn't know about. On my first time going through while I was playing the story originally, I found one page of information about one of the gods, a parable about Grenth. I found one page. Turns out that that's just one page of like 8 in a book about Grenth that you find littered all over the map, but they're really well hidden, and casually playing, even going for map complete, you're unlikely to find many of these. And there's a book about Grenth, and then there's a ton of pages of lore about Balthazar and Dwayna and Melanju, and so on and so on and so on. I believe there's also another collection that you can complete, which just gives you general information about the Risen, and this is even tied to a kind of Shadowstone current events style quest thing, where you can speak to an NPC, and then you can go off and find all these objects, and then you can return to the NPC, and you can spawn a boss, and you can do various things like that. All of that is super under the surface, and all of that is stuff that you'll be seeing in a separate video, and that's the kind of way that this map feels. It feels like there's nothing much going on, but if you really pay close attention, you can find a lot of deeper things there. That said, one of the big things we were excited about going into the finale was that maybe there would be Orion script written on various aspects of ruined architecture, and we as players would be able to translate it. Dev had alluded to the idea that if we'd ever get an Orion map in Living World Season 3, they'd tell the devs about it, and maybe we would see something happen there. That didn't happen at all. Really disappointing. I feel quite bad that I made this 10-month-old message that was obviously quite casually posted a big bit of attention. I am a little bit let down by that, but hopefully these collections with all the other lore and extra information about the gods, which by the way doesn't contradict existing laws and only adds to it, which I think is awesome, hopefully that can kind of carry all of the weight. So my advice to you guys, if you haven't played this map in real detail just yet, if you're not looking at the meta event achievements anymore, maybe do so. More basic things about the map and interesting things that they did. So all around you can find waterlogged chests. This again is very Season 2 style. You know, you've got bandit chests in the Silver Wastes, and you had those sandstorm chests in Drytop. You got a similar thing there. Opening those can give you a random chance to get more pearls and things of that nature. As I already mentioned, the Unbound Magic exists. But you also have a mechanic to do with a new enemy called Leyline Scavengers. So this new mechanic is essentially there are some mobs that you can kill in the map, and what they've been doing is scurrying around grabbing magic from the area, maybe left over from after Zaitan died. If you kill them, you can interact with these creatures or their corpses and gather that magic into yourself, and you'll get 5 new skills. And those 5 new skills are really interesting. Some of them help you complete the hearts quicker by purifying areas, but one of them in particular actually allows you to jump quite highly. So if you guys haven't played with this enough, you might not realize what they're doing is a very Drytop similar thing in Sirens Landing. In Drytop you could find Zephyrite crystals. Grab the crystal and you can jump, you can get to new areas. They do that all the time here. Now, the main story never asks you to do it, but if you want various points of interest, various vistas, and especially a lot of these collection things, and go out into the really hidden areas of the map and properly explore it, you'll be using this mechanic a lot. It feels very much like those old Zephyrite things, which once upon a time, you know, was something most Guild Wars 2 players were really in love with, so don't miss out on that, guys. Moving on as well, we do have a new mastery, and the new mastery is cool as well. I lament the fact that, like the Kodan mastery, we might only ever get to experience it here. So the mastery is called Siren of Awe, and again, it's not something you really have to focus on or spend any time paying attention to. Quite different to, say, Draconis Mons recently. This mastery is very fun for group events, and there are several well-tuned group events finally in this map. The bosses in this map tend to be a bit harder, but it's because of this mastery, I think. What it is it's tied to quite a lot of lore, which is sort of secondary to the patch. But we hear about these Sirens, okay? Now, Sirens, supposedly, this is the first time we've properly heard of these. There were maybe minor references to Sirens before, but nothing jogs in my mind. They were great sorcerers from Awe. We've essentially, by training this master, we've learned to become a Siren ourselves, and we've learned to train with them, and we can use a little bit of Siren magic. So, curiously, right at the start of the map, they have a tutor system in there. This, again, isn't something that Guild Wars does very much, but there's an NPC you can walk over to. They'll introduce you to the idea of being a Siren, and if you interact with them, they'll teleport you to a special tutorial place where you can mess about with this this mastery. This mastery basically unlocks 5 new skills, 5 new special action hotkey skills for you, and you can play around with them in this tutorial area and get extra lore. So there were these great sorcerers, and Siren magic, they say, is a manifestation of magic beyond time, whatever that means. So a siren will exist, and over time their voice will fade, but that siren will always exist and they will remain. And sirens through the ages of Tyria's history are drawn to other sirens and kind of come together. And Sirens Landing is one of these places where multiple sirens have congregated. And so you go to this gallery where lots of them are hanging around and they are singing the songs of the gods. Siren magic is, you know, singing essentially in such a way that you invoke the power of the gods. So how do we get the special action hotkeys? What happens is all throughout this map, and indeed the personal story instances attached to this map, sometimes when you are when a player is in combat or ends combat or kills something, sometimes a big burst of like golden light will appear and an orb will be floating around there. So these things spawn where players are, and they'll appear on the map, the mini map. If you press M while you're in Sirens Landing, you can find these. They're called Chancel of Echoes, these interactable golden orbs. Now you press F on them and you will get a random special action hotkey, one of 5 skills, and those skills are based after the gods. And yes, I did say 5, not 6. So one of the coolest things about this, and the lore stuff that they've bound to this mastery, which I think is quite strong, by the way, they haven't really bound so much lore to the masteries as they have here. When you're in the tutorial area, you can ask, hey, so we can invoke Balthazar, Melandru, Dwayna, Grenth. Why can't we do Abaddon or Cormyr? And so they give a really interesting answer to this. You guys can see the text in the background here. They say that ancient sirens closely guarded Abaddon's dirge. So it was secretive, nobody really knew it, and perhaps it was incredibly powerful. So they don't know it. And so they say here that their echoes are so faint now, drowned out by the multitude singing the songs of the other gods. So we just don't know what Abaddon's dirge was. We don't know what his special action would be. I love the idea that it would be the super powerful thing. I love the idea that maybe in the future it is utilized by some character in some way. And there's a suggestion here as well, maybe, am I reading a bit too deep, but the idea that maybe once all the gods have receded, then there is space to understand what Abaddon's dirge was. You know, Abaddon was the god of secrets and water, and I've always found that pairing so magical and lovely. I won't geek out too hard about it, but I love that, you know, that his dirge is secretive too. And that's not all. There's also another really interesting thing that we hear here, and then they end the comment by saying, and Cormyr, question mark? I know not of whom you speak. And that's great, right? Because I think what they're setting up here is not that there's something super special and weird going on with Cormyr, but that, you know, these sirens, they were people of awe, and they understood the gods as they understood the gods. But, you know, awe had been sunk and destroyed by the time Cormyr rose to godhood. It could be that Cormyr does have a dirge. You could sing about Cormyr. You could do this with Cormyr, but none of the sirens we interact with are familiar with her in any way. Maybe one day we'll meet a siren of Cormyr, but there isn't one on this map. So you only get 5 skills, and I think that it's really cool. You know, the devs could have easily added like a 6th skill for either of these two, you know, Cormyr or Abaddon, and they could have done something, but they didn't. And they did that because, you know, that's mechanics that are actually stepping aside because of the lore, and I think that was really, really, really cool. So it's a fantastic mastery, and it's particularly fun, like I say, as you run around the map. So I'll talk about what these special action hotkeys do specifically as I talk about the map more. So when we start talking about Lissa, I'll tell you what the Lissa dirge does. But all of them are long cast times. And as you like sing this song, and there's a nice little sound effect that goes with it, and they're big wind-ups. But as you are using a dirge, as you're holding the special action hotkey down, let's say you got the Dwayna one, there's this big expanding animation on the ground, and it'll affect all the allies that are in the area who can hear the song. And because the devs have put such a great tell on this mastery, I really like this mastery, guys, because they put such a good tell on it. What you'll find is a lot of players run around the map with their special action hotkey, and they're not quite sure when they want to use it. All of these songs last 90 seconds, and once you've used it, it's gone until you can find another chancel, and those appear randomly. So mostly people are holding on to their special actions, and they're not quite sure when they want to use them. But you'll get these amazing moments where the zergs around the map, they'll notice that someone's casting a dirge, someone is singing a song because the animation is so big, and then they'll think, okay, so they're using that god, the Lissa buff. I'll combo with the Melandru Melanju buff. I've got Melanju, so I'll use it as well. And you'll find another person start singing, and you'll find another person start singing, and another. And you'll get these huge groups of players that all use the dirge together, and then all run away from one another. Or you do it in the middle of an event, and everyone's like super charged, because these special action hotkeys are incredibly powerful. And I love the way that that just kind of organically happens. And, you know, that's the beauty of being in an MMO and having these social experiences. I think it's so cool. I love this mastery. I just hate that there's not more big events and interesting applications as players for us to use it, because we only get to use it here. Maybe later in the game, the devs can put these chancels in other maps or something. That would be so cool. But yeah, definitely check it out, guys. If you haven't played with it, like I said, the first time I came to this map, I didn't even look at mastery properly. And I think that's a shame. I think that's a real shame. So let's talk about the map itself. You guys will have been seeing a lot of that in the background. We start off at a place called the Bloated Beach. This is where your ship sails in on at Camp Reclamation Waypoint, and you meet several of the people who are here now, mainly Silvari. You've got some of the other races hanging around as well, but people are basically identifying, look, Zaitan's gone, we're trying to cleanse all, let's help it along. Camp Reclamation Waypoint is the only waypoint on the whole map. Now, there is a new teleportation system on the map, another system which you can wholly ignore, but there is another mechanic, and I think it's a bit of a throwback to Guild Wars 1. We'll talk about that in just a moment. This is the only waypoint on the map. There's some interesting characters there. There's a guy called Wrangler Winfred, who's got a giant grub that he met in Caledon Forest, and it sort of goes into a cage crate place near there, and we've got the Siren of Ortutor place nearby. I will also point out at this point that this map's got a lot of water. There's a huge amount of water here, but I haven't really explored much of it, because essentially there's a single island out on the top right corner with a massive tower, and that's a giant jumping puzzle, and we'll look at that later. Quite coolly though, out in the water there is a floating boat, a massive boat that isn't a wrecked boat, isn't a sinking boat. It's just a straight up, you know, giant ship that lots of people have come to the area on, floating off in a distance. And the only way to get to it, you have to use this dry top jumping kind of mechanic, the scavenger mechanic, or you have to glide there from the end of the jumping puzzle to get a mastery point that's on it. Really fantastic. I love that boat, and a very, very fun part of the map. Probably one of the coolest mastery points that they've done before, which of course also litter this map all over the place. Moving on further inland, you can get to the Risen Lowlands from the Bloated Beach. This is where you get a lot of the lore on the map, and again, it's easy to miss. These are the typical Guild Wars 2 NPCs, where most of the time they're standing around not doing anything, but every now and then they'll have idle dialogue. And it's that idle dialogue that's really revealing and gave me a lot of the meat from this map. And sadly, it's very easy to miss. But these NPCs will talk about the fact they'll directly call out Traherne, and they'll say, Traherne, this was his wild hunt, and we want to do it in his name. They'll talk about that and how they're trying to clear a safe space in Ore for that. There's a couple of Asuran NPCs hidden in a really cool area of a ruin that's quite hard to get to, and you can walk over to them, you can speak to them, and they'll point out that they're watching the Risen, and they're trying to count how many Risen there are so that they know whether they're making progress. And one of them even says, look, the Risen are like communicating with each other and noticing one another, and they're curious because it feels like now that the Risen don't have Zaitan, they're not thralls, they're almost like sentient on some level. And that's a really interesting thing to think about too. Particularly the end of this patch is revealed we're going to the Crystal Desert. I can finally talk freely about this stuff. We know in the lore that Palawa Joko, a powerful lich, is in the Crystal Desert. And there could be a lot of undead stories coming there, so maybe they're hinting at something to do with that. Very cool. There's an odd vendor here, and I believe like one of those quest-like Shadowstone NPCs is here as well. There's an odd vendor selling some strange stuff and a cage you can open and close. A few events will trigger there. I would really recommend you guys hang around the Risen Lowlands for a while. Really take the time to see what the NPCs say and experience a couple of events around there, because you do get a lot more lore out of there than you'd realize. And again, the story journal doesn't even take you to that part of the map. Moving further inland, you got an area called the Merciless Shore. I don't really have too much to say here. This is where two giant mobs fight one another, a massive oak heart versus an equally massive risen giant. And it kind of connects to a place called Melanju's Reliquary, where there's a big wrecked greenhouse. And this is where we can talk about some of the other stuff that's going on the map. So the map has a meta event. I'm not really sure how significant this meta event is. It's basically like, just keep every reliquary on the map, and there's one for each god, keep them safe, keep them clean, and only when the map is fully pushed and everything's nice and safe can you get a bonus mechanic at the end, which I will describe to you guys shortly. So that's kind of the meta, but you've got all these different reliquaries across the map. Melanju is likely the first one you'll come to. This is where each heart quest is. and there's a couple of other little things going on. So really interestingly, the NPC at Melandru's reliquary is King Razor. King Razor is the most important king, really. This is the king we actually cleanse. He's the final boss of the personal story before victory or death, which once upon a time was a dungeon instead. This is, you know, that big badass eye you fight there. He was the last king of Or. He was the king of Or when it collapsed, if I remember correctly. Razor is the heart guy here. You can get a lot more dialogue out of him during the story, which I'm not talking about right now because of spoilers, but it's also easy to miss, so just bear that in mind, guys. So you're going to cleanse this area, you're going to finish this heart, and you can buy extra stuff from him. So there are two new mechanics when we get to the reliquaries. First of all is the Orion coffer mechanic. Now you guys might be thinking, wow, this map sounds a bit like regular Or, where we also have big temples to the various gods and you've got to capture them. It's kind of like that. It's like all of the temple ideas that spread across the other 3 Or maps, except all in one. You might also remember that in the original vanilla Orion maps, we once upon a time had an Or update. Do you guys remember that? A reward update for Or. And they added these chests, these coffers you could buy for karma, and you'd get random stuff out of them. And in fact, I believe it was a mini Balthazar you could get out. I wonder if that was hinting at stories to come from way back then. But they've got a similar thing on this map. So the pearls you can spend to get these coffers, and you can only get a certain number of coffers per NPC per day, and you'll only find these NPCs at the reliquaries. So you might be able to buy 8, or you might be able to buy 2. I'm not sure how it works exactly. But when you open these coffers, you're guaranteed to get your pearls back. But in addition to your pearls, you can also get junk items and lodestones and who knows what else. They didn't put right-click preview on these, which I think is a real shame, since they managed to do that with that Jotun NPC in the Bitterfrost Frontier update a while back. So this is a little mechanic, and that's like a daily thing. So every day you can go through, you can get these hearts, and you should be spending your pearls to get these coffers, because you'll get the currency back, but then you'll get other stuff on top. And it's just very reminiscent of that other old coffer mechanic, which nobody uses anymore because it's not cost-effective in the vanilla Or map. So there's another little thing going on. And then finally, earlier I mentioned there's only one waypoint on this map. So there is a shrine mechanic here, which allows you to teleport around to the various reliquaries. And if you look at the user interface, it's very reminiscent of resurrection shrines from Guild Wars 1. So I won't bore you guys with the details of how dying and waypointing and stuff worked in Guild Wars 1, but I think what the devs have essentially done is they've done a callback to the first game, and this is kind of that res shrine mechanic. It's like a res shrine combined with a waypoint. So you have one waypoint on the map, but then also if you spend your pearls, 10 of them, you can unlock extra waypoints. So for the layperson, it's kind of like we have a waypoint mechanic where you actually have to buy waypoints with currency from the new map. And it's actually fun. You guys might think, oh no, it's more arbitrary gating and stuff, but it's fun to explore a map, get certain currencies, and then decide how you want to spend it. There's actually a lot of different things to spend these pearls on, especially with the new ludicrous collections and stuff they've added. And so I like this. I actually really did like this. It's technically not waypointing anymore, it's called teleporting, and you can go to these shrines and slowly unlock more shrines the more time you spend on the map. 10 per shrine, and there's 4 of them that you can go for. So very fun. I don't know why they played with this. Maybe this is a sign of some expansion mechanics that might be coming up, but it was certainly an interesting thing to look at, and I got a little bit nostalgic about. I just mentioned collections, so there's the last thing as well. The heart vendors at the reliquaries all sell a back piece. So here, King Razor at Melandru, he will offer you a Melandru back piece. It's an ascended backpack. It costs 200 of the pearls, but it is an ascended backpack, and they look quite interesting. Now, once you collect that, it dings a rare collection. If you get all 5 of them that are on the map, and that's, as you can already guess, a hell of a lot of pearls. That's 1,000 of them. If you get all 5 of them, you get a final ultimate one, which is the Abaddon one. And it's very exciting to me. It's a long goal. I think a lot of people might find backpacks like that ugly. But again, it's more stuff along the line of legendary trinkets and things, which the finale has added. You know, there's a lot of stuff to really get quite enthusiastic about and end up playing a lot of this map for. Who knows, I might go for it. So exploring around this area of the map is pretty cool as well. There's a giant tower, the Watchman's Roost. You're going to start playing with updrafts, and you're going to start playing with the scavengers. To complete the hearts is generally just kill enemies in the area, but you can do additional things like get the leyline scavengers and then try and purify the area. You can go faster, completing events as they proc. I haven't seen all of the events for all of the regions of the map just yet, but most of them seem pretty interesting. The other thing to talk about at Melandru, finally, is the Dirge. So remember the Mastery, you get a dirge for each god. So Melandru's Dirge is, it gives you something called Wild Growth. I'm not sure if that's a Guild Wars 1 reference or if that's a World of Warcraft reference actually to me. I know Wild Growth more from Hearthstone than anything else. But the way that this Dirge works is when you sing it, it will affect enemies, 10 enemies that are in the area or 10 allies or both. This one will mean that whenever your allies who are under the empowered by this song, whenever they get attacked, they get retaliation on them and enemies start getting bled. And you can also summon a little mushroom ally that will charge around with you when you have sung this song. So that's the Melandru one. Moving on, let's go to Grenth. The Grenth Dirge is kind of crazy, actually. It's like ultimate speed-based stuff. So it affects 10 allies like they all do. And allies affected have shorter casting times, shorter recharges, and move faster. And enemies that hear it have the reverse. They have longer casting times, longer recharges, and move slower. And also, your allies will gain protection if they are ever critically hit by a foe. How crazy is that? And now imagine, you can see why everybody sings together. Imagine having both the Grenth buff and the Melandru buff on at once. These things last 90 seconds, so it's long enough to get multiple at once. And you get this beautiful like user interface above your head. So at Grenth, we've got Queen Matab. There's lots of queens and kings and things around here. Many of them we haven't heard about in the lore before, but I like it. It fleshes out a bit more of the royal family of Or, and I think that that's quite nice. I haven't really seen many of the events at Grenth, unfortunately, guys. There's these beautiful raids that are in a circle. They appeared in the trailer. In the end, it had nothing to do really with what we were speculating about before, but they kind of look a little bit white and they look a little bit different. When I found these raids, first of all, I was desperately counting them to see how many there were in case they were the Reapers of Grenth or something, but it doesn't seem the devs are going for that. The Grenth area generally is one of the ones I know least about. Moving hastily on, we go to Dwayna. Remember, Goddess of Wind and Air. So the Dwayna Reliquary is probably my favorite place on the whole map. It's awesome. So they put a lot of detail into the environment on this area, and it's very, very, very fun. So there's a broken statue of Dwayna in the area, and as the Goddess of Wind and Air, if you glide near that, you're just perpetually like empowered to float upwards. Do you remember how Flashpoint ended while we were flying inside the volcano and we were constantly moving upwards? They just do that naturally and seamlessly around Dwayna's statue. They don't call any attention to it. It's not super necessary, but it's a nice little touch that they have in the environment, and they do that all over the place. So there's a beautiful big waterfall that's flowing down between Dwayna and Grenth, and if you are underneath that waterfall and you try jumping, you actually can't really jump against the cascading water that's slamming down above you. It's little touches like this that I think really allow the maps to sort of flex their muscles. This is what I liked about Dry Top, you know, with the quicksand and when little sandfalls would drop down on you and they would blind you. Also that waterfall, when you climb to the top, if you can fly high enough up, and you try and walk in the river that's about to plummet off the cliff, it will actually push you back. Do you guys remember in Heart of Thorns, you had like that slippery slope of water? And they so rarely do that. They so rarely pay enough attention to implement that. Well, they have that movement mechanic in there as well, so that's really nice. The whole area is filled with updrafts, and they're updrafts that flick on and off. You guys might remember a few months ago, I was praising the second update of Living World Season 3 for doing this. On Ember Bay, there were little updrafts that would turn on or off. We hadn't seen the devs do very much of it. Well, that happens all over the time. It's basically like a giant jungle gym of flying around for you. That's the Dwayna area. You fly through poison to cleanse the section and complete your heart, or you can drop down and kill things. You can also grab artifacts in the area, which give you skills to use while gliding. So we already saw a bit of this with Bloodstone Fen. I think that these skills, being perfectly honest, are not as good as the Bloodstone Fen skills. They're kind of fiddly and you can't cancel out of them, and they're kind of just annoying really to use. But they allow you to navigate the area even more so with your glider than you would usually expect. And what a great way to do justice to the Goddess of Wind and Air. Beautiful, brilliant heart, really like it. And on top of that, it's got a very cool event at it as well, which I've seen a couple of times now. You collect a ton of artifacts, and the NPC in the area inadvertently spawns a wyvern. The wyvern has this crazy like knockback purple shockwave thing, and you need to throw artifacts at it to break its break bar and then burn it down. This is like a proper world boss, guys. And as it's in the new map where everyone has the mastery, you get these epic experiences of everybody popping these dirges in these huge zergs before then pushing in on this wyvern and just doing crazy damage and, you know, incredible speeds. Speaking of dirges, the weirdest one is Dwayna's. Now, this is cool as well. I think that they pay respect to the lore here as well. Most dirges are just buffs for your allies, and debuffs for the enemies that are in the area when you pop them. Dwayne is slightly different in that instead of lasting 90 seconds, it actually lasts something like 600 seconds. What it does is it reses 10 targets in the area. And when I say reses, I mean downed or defeated. So you can bring 10 defeated allies up. And beyond that, once, whether you were down or not, once you've sung, it also is the equivalent of putting Rebound or Glyph of Fire, Glyph of Renewal in Fire mode on allies as well, which means that the next time you die, in the next 600 seconds, you'll also instantly res. And again, that's downed or defeated. So it's really powerful, super strong, like resing people up, and it's very much in tune with Dwayne. And Dwayne's one's a bit different as a dirge, but I think that's fine because Dwayne is supposed to be the leader of the gods, and she gets to be a little bit different. She gets to be a little bit special. Continuing to push along around the map here, away from this cool area. We have Balthazar. So this is Balthazar's reliquary. Very striking, beautiful area of the map. Lots of lava-y stuff. So there's suggestions that Balthazar's actually been in the area. We see Balthazar's mercenaries here from recent patches you guys will be familiar with. This is absolutely the most dangerous area on the map. This place is grossly difficult to get through. Massive stacks of burning if you don't step in the right place. Thankfully, Balthazar's Dirge, and it's not that you necessarily get Balthazar's Dirge from Balthazar's area, it's random, but Balthazar's Dirge, should you get it, means a huge number of things, but allies become immune to burning. So that's nice. Allies also gain more endurance faster, more crit chance, and any damage that they get afflicted with is lower. And enemies that are affected by Balthazar's Dirge have all of that as well. So they take more damage, and they're constantly burning, and they get even more burning while moving. Like, it's like Torment burning crossover. It's crazy, all the stuff that you get there on that one. Having Balthazar's Dirge makes exploring his area much stronger, but there's some really crazy enemies here too. There's an event with a silverback gorilla, a champion silverback gorilla, who does exactly what I was hoping for before this release. Remember, I talked about how the Shatterer Minotaurs lock you in and you have to break the break bar to get it away. This gorilla does exactly that. The new enemies that we saw in the trailer, those molten elementals, they're all over this place. Possibly, I would expect to be used in the expansion. We've got a cool priest character there who's a bit of a murderous bastard, actually. There's a worm event, and the worm is legitimately challenging. This place is tough, and I really like it. It's also got a very beautiful tunnel at the back. There's so much we could talk about. It's a great map, guys. And almost last, we have Lissa's reliquary. So moving through this tunnel at the back of Balthazar takes you to Lissa. Lissa's Dirge is 10 enemies and 10 allies can be affected. And it's kind of like Pain Inverter for Guild Wars 2. So it's like Reflect. Allies, if you're under Lissa's buff, when you get attacked, 50% of that damage just disappears and instead goes on the enemy. So if an enemy hits you for 2,000 damage, instead you only take 1,000 and 1,000 goes straight back to them. So all of the damage is getting reflected. But at the same time, remember, an ally can hear the Dirge and so can an enemy. Now, if an enemy hears it and attacks an ally who heard it, they literally cannot do any damage. They do 0 damage. Every attack that enemy does for the next 90 seconds, it reflects 100% of it back to them. So enemies will kill themselves for the next 90 seconds if you sing this in their face. You could just stand there and watch them beat themselves to death. How cool is that? That is so mesmery. It's brilliant. The area too, this is the kind of purpley area with all the phantasms, the longbow wielding phantasms we were talking about. It's just lots of portals. It's not really a formal jumping puzzle. Now, I'm sure there's lots of hidden stuff there in terms of those lore objectives I talked about at the start of this video, but it's lots of portals. You nip around. There's just chaos energy everywhere. There's a bizarre event with a floating shark that runs around, and that's very fun. Generally a very crazy, messed up area, and that's all I really have to say about this. And then finally, you've got Abaddon. Abaddon's reliquary is the last one. This is where the story ends. Don't worry, I won't spoil any of that. Now, Abaddon, there's really not much going on. But when the map meta is complete, and preferably as well, I think, when you're on a character who's finished the story, you can go inside. Now, the idea, or the lore of this area is that Abaddon, these reliquaries hold the secrets of the gods. And Abaddon had more secrets than any of the others. And so he sort of bound all of their reliquaries together. And only when magic flowed through all of them could Abaddon's be open. So it was kind of, I think it's a bit weirdly justified. But the idea is that if a god tried to get away and destroy their own secrets, they'd take all of them down with them or something. Or they were supposed to be beholden to Abaddon. Anyway, it's a justification for the meta. Once all of the reliquaries are secure and nice and happy, you can go inside Abaddon's. And down here, you'll find a ring of chests. And once per day, you can open one of these chests, and out of it, you can get a random amount of oysters. You can get 5 oysters, 10 oysters, 20 oysters. I've heard of even getting 50 oysters at once. There's an achievement for opening that chest lot, so you get to pick exactly which one you go for, and you can spend like a gold 50 to re-roll and, you know, open another one. But you can only do a certain number per day. And that's really the Abaddon area. There are no real events. It is very interesting for lore, I will say, and the story does a bit more here. But in terms of the map, actually upstairs, there's a priest of Abaddon there. Bizarrely, a priest of Abaddon. Now that is all kinds of messed up and really weird. And the priest of Abaddon in his dialogue even talks about there being a priesthood of Abaddon. Ergo, there are multiple of them. And that's a really wild thing. Like, it was not Nightfall. The end times were not that long ago. It's crazy to think you'd have a human just openly self-penning himself as a priest of Abaddon at this point. Very bizarre. I'm a bit scared this is sort of like when the Lake Doric patch came out and the devs wrote in loads of char on the map and used the wrong titles and stuff. I'm scared that they don't quite realize what they're playing with there. I really don't know whether there should be humans who believe in Abaddon openly like this and aren't utterly detested worldwide and would be as casual as this guy is, but there you go. So yeah, all of these different areas have got cool different NPCs, botanists, people learning about the various kind of plants and how they can encourage regrowth. Really take your time with it, guys. It's a great map, and I seriously do suggest, if you haven't been looking at those meta achievements, and again, I do not blame you, if you've not been looking at those meta achievements recently, try it again. For this map especially, have a good look at this map. Try and get the most out of this map. Complete the collections with this map and play with those mechanics like the scavenger and the jumping stuff and find all of the hidden things in there. Should be very cool. I will be back shortly, guys, for lore. Lore about the parables of the gods, about the observations about the Risen, and also the awesome-looking jumping puzzle on a tower out at sea, Pillar Star Rock. So thanks very much for watching, guys. That's the new map. Let me know what you think. Do you have a similar experience to me where you thought it was like basically nothing, but there was more than meets the eye? And I hope to see you all very, very soon. Catch you next time, guys.